Oh,
Hey,
hello.
everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tabnine Office Hours. My name is Maya Deshmukh. I'm head of marketing programs at Tabnine.
And I'm Chris Good. I'm a product marketer here at Tabnine. We're excited to have Amaya back this week. It was a lonely week last week if you were here with just me. So we're excited to have the full team back. And as always, if you have any questions or you have any comments, anything you want to see, this is an interactive chat. So post things in the comment section. You can converse among yourselves, talk about what we're talking about. But yeah, feel free to say hello too. If you're tuning in for the first time or you've been here before, we love seeing who's on call with us today.
Yep. So feel free to intro yourself in the chat. And as you'll see, as we go along and your comments come in during my presentation, we'll stop at certain moments to answer QA. If the comment's super relevant to what I'm talking about at the moment, I might even just stop what I'm saying, pull it up and chat with you about it and address it right away. But yeah, make sure you make use of that chat. So let's go ahead and get right into it then. So the way office hours typically work, I'll give you a detailed rundown of the topic we're going to cover. We'll dive into some academic research, third-party research, educate you on AI and software development, LLMs, pretty much everything you need to know to adopt, evaluate, and deploy AI to accelerate your SDLC while maintaining total data privacy, protection against legal liabilities and security vulnerability, as well as ensuring you get the desired level of performance out of your AI system. That'll be followed by a full in-depth demonstration of all of our platform's capabilities live on air, and the entire thing is interactive. So you can even ask us to see custom demos of stuff you want to see, or ask me to pause and dive in deeper. And if you'd like to see any of the source material for any of the stats and info I share later, just go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Amaya Deshmukh from Tabnine, and drop me an email and I'll send it right over to you. Now, since you're all here and talking to me, I'm going to tell you something you already all know. Enterprise AI adoption is skyrocketing, and Gartner predicts that by 2028, 75% of enterprise software engineers will use AI code assistants. Now, that's no surprise, because the performance gains have been spectacular. So you ask any developer today in surveys, including the Google Door report, and they'll tell you they are more productive with AI and they like using it. Now, various studies will say 30 to 50% productivity gains across the full set of tasks in the SDLC. At Tabnine, what we can tell you specifically is our enterprise customers have achieved a 75% automation factor through using our platform. And what that means is 3 out of every 4 lines of code that they're producing is being made or helped to be made by their use of Tabnine. So AI is pretty powerful stuff. And it's rapidly becoming more and more autonomous, right? So think about how this all started with code completions for us back in 2018 when we invented the category. And since then, all the features we've released, AI chat, switchable models, local context awareness, global codebase awareness, agents for every step of the SDLC, including our code review agent and our Jira to code agent. All of these capabilities are rapidly becoming the industry standard. And what's kind of unique about the moment we're in right now is there's been this mad rush towards autonomous agents. And they're pretty cool. I've used some of those tools myself, and they're really great at going from 0 to 1. So if you're starting something from scratch and trying to build an MVP really quickly, a lot of these autonomous agentic tools are very useful for that. What we found is that they really start to break down and struggle when you actually get into the enterprise. And when you get into enterprise-grade challenges and engineering tasks, the customers we work with find they require a different type of AI agent. And what's most worrisome to developers from the conversations I have with them is rather the concept of the AI engineer. So there's this real fear in enterprise developers that AI is going to replace them. And let me just tell you right now, it isn't. It never will. And honestly, I think that any AI tool that's out there for software engineering that's positioning this as anything like a industrial revolution or industrial automation or things of that nature that really sees the developer as an inefficiency is completely off the mark. And AI tools can never replace developers, and that's certainly not what we're building at Tabnine. Our entire platform is designed to augment developers and increase the ability of engineering teams to share their internal best practices with each other and make their own code bases and applications more discoverable. And really, when you think about the AI engineer, that's not coming anytime soon. It's impossible to predict when it will come. Mark Zuckerberg says it's here this year. I don't agree with him. And if you heard some of the latest conferences and summits from the loudest voices that have been pushing the entire concept of AGI, pretty much every single person that's been pushing that very loudly for the last 5 years has completely backed off of it. And I think you'll quickly realize why subsequently. So the question is autonomous AI agents, this concept, this technology, the solutions that are out there today, are they actually enterprise ready? And let me walk you through some of the issues with what's out there today. So GetClear published a report that came out late 2024. They looked at 211 million lines of code. And what I read in it was pretty concerning. And it looked like a pretty clear picture that AI adoption broadly is actually increasing technical debt. Now, on the short term, perhaps that doesn't matter so much because you're just getting features out faster. In the long term, imagine having to maintain and update and bug fix millions of lines of code. And if you're using something that's fully autonomous and not human in the loop, that's agentic in fashion, it could be making changes to the code without your developers really understanding what it's doing or being informed. Now imagine layering that on top of an enterprise code base that already has pretty significant technical debt within it that you're dealing with. That's just going to compound the problem, and that seems to be occurring. So look, 8-fold increase in the frequency of code blocks with 5+ duplicated lines just last year, drop in refactoring by 44%, and a 10x increase in duplicate code blocks in commits. So this stuff is making it past code review, and that is not good. Now, the reason that's happening is that LLMs, which, let's be honest, most AI coding systems available on the market today are really just thin application wrappers placed around a set of LLMs that operate as an IDE plugin, or perhaps they do that and make some more calls back to the LLM in rapid fashion with autonomous agentic workflows. But even the ones that have context engines per se are doubtful as to their quality, as you'll discover later. But this report from Google, Google Door Report 2024, a really interesting finding from that. They predicted that as AI adoption increases by 25%, a subsequent decrease of 7.2% in delivery stability, and then a 1.5% decrease is starting to be seen in delivery throughput. So it's actually starting to have a negative effect on efficiency in some level, as well as certainly a negative effect on actually shipping quality code and applications. And because of that, you ask enterprise developers if they actually trust the quality of AI-generated code, and most of them really do not. 10% nearly don't trust it at all. Nearly 1/3 only say they trust it a little, and the vast majority just say they, some kind of gets it right sometimes. And the reason for that is, look, if the context engine in your AI code assistant isn't built to an enterprise grade level and isn't sophisticated in its use of retrieval augmented generation, and that isn't paired with human in the loop AI agents, you're not really able to direct any sort of agent to discover, develop, and then deliver functionality to you that actually repurposes and makes use of your existing applications. For example, it might not even be able to find a certain microservice that you should have been using for an API call that you're making. And instead, it would have just created a brand new one from scratch, and perhaps it went on and built that as a monolithic application. Now you've got this huge mess of code, but that's the other issue, right? If the context engine isn't built appropriately, AI really struggles to solve enterprise-grade engineering tasks. And here's a good study, George Mason University. 3 key findings here. Copilot is something that it struggles with is actually delivering code that aligns and is usable for real-world tasks and scenarios. It can be inefficient in complex environments, and specifically, Codium has been shown to struggle significantly with hard problems across all categories, with a success rate as low as 13%. And this study in particular looked at about, I believe, 200 or 300 lead code problems. Now, technical debt and poor context awareness isn't the only issue here. It's also that generic AI coding systems frequently output insecure code. And there really hasn't been a focus in the industry besides at Tabnine in using AI to both generate and validate that code to bring it in compliance with, say, your IP policies, your legal policies, as well as your standards for code architecture, security, maintenance, scalability, what have you. And really the raw LLM by itself and a inappropriately designed context engine in the sense that it meets the needs of enterprise teams. That problem really hasn't been solved by what's out there on the market today. So you go back to 2021, 40% of programs in one study had vulnerabilities. You look at 2022, 73% of these 130 code samples had vulnerabilities. You go up to 2024 and 33% and 25% of 452 snippets in various languages contain 38 different CWEs. And that's really not good, right? Because you need to be able to trust that the code that you're shipping isn't scaling technical debt and it isn't filling your code base with security vulnerabilities in the enterprise. It doesn't matter if you're just building an application from scratch or you're building something at a startup because you'll fix it later, but certainly not something you want in an enterprise code base. Now, compound that with the hallucination issue that is inherently present in LLMs. So you go back to 2023, a great study from Vulcan Cyber. Congratulations to them, by the way, on their recent acquisition. That's awesome. But Lanyadoo from Vulcan Cyber finds that GPT-4 hallucinates packages in about 25% nearly of questions that he queries it with. Then Spracklin in 2025 finds that across 16 of the most popular LLMs for code generation, 20% incidence rate still of package hallucination 2 years later. So clearly just improving the underperforming, clearly just improving the performance of the underlying model itself isn't resolving this issue. And then Tian and some others in 2025 actually created a benchmark for this called code hallucination or code hallu. And they're finding a wide variability in LLM performance. So raw LLMs aren't going to solve this problem. You need some context. Fine tuning doesn't seem to be the approach to solve this either. So this is a great study from University of Singapore, came out last year, proposed a fundamental theorem for LLM hallucination. Four elements to that. One is that it is inevitable for all computable LLMs. They will all hallucinate. They will hallucinate on an infinite number of questions rather. And the study also found that they're hallucination prone in many of the problems that you encounter in software development queries. So Boolean logic, combinatorial lists, subset sum problems, propositional logic. LLMs are more likely to fabricate information and hallucinate when they do this. And fine-tuning can reduce hallucinations a little bit to some extent, largely through training the model on code that it hasn't seen in its training data before. That seems to be largely the most effective application of fine-tuning. In other use cases in software development, the usage of fine-tuning is rather questionable in its efficacy. And look, there's nothing wrong with the LLMs. They're an incredible technology. They're only going to get better over time. But there are some fundamental issues with just the technology itself, and that is that they are prediction machines, not truth machines, and they don't know facts the way that you do. So they're just predicting the next token based on their training data, and they lack real-time verification mechanisms. So they can't check on their own if generated code is actually correct, or if it even exists. And if the training data is incomplete or outdated, the model is going to hallucinate to fill in missing gaps. Oftentimes, you'll find that you get code suggestions that look syntactically correct, but they reference APIs that don't exist. Perhaps they use deprecated functions or insecure patterns. Fine tuning isn't going to fix it either, because it just adjusts the model's weights using domain-specific data. It's not going to fundamentally change how the LLM generates or validates the response. What is it generating it against? What is it validating it against? And furthermore, let's say you did fine-tune an LLM on your entire code base, and for the sake of argument, let's say that it went exceedingly well. You got the performance you wanted out of it, and you didn't end up running into any of the myriad of issues that can occur during fine-tuning, like memory loss, things of that nature. Well, even if you did that, the instant a thing changed in your code base, perhaps like a programming language changed, or one of your dependencies changed, and there's some new packages and things of that nature, guess what? The model's out of date now, so you got to retrain it again, which means you have to go and do data labeling and gathering again, and all the verification on the back end that's functioning correctly after you train it. And at the end of the day, even fine-tuning a model is still going to make it reliant on a snapshot of your code base. It's static training data you're still doing at the end of the day, and not live code repositories. So think about fine-tuning really as just better pattern matching, for specific languages, syntax, and approaches common to those specific languages when the LLM does not have awareness or data for those languages in its underlying set. It's not real-time validation. Now, you might be thinking, okay, what if I just layer on a LLM and then like a reasoning model, and then maybe I fine-tune like a third model on my code security policies, and then I can just use a mixture of experts approach to send one query from one LLM to another. Well, it's totally natural to think that hallucination will disappear as you use more LLMs or layer on expert model ensembles, or add more training data. But that study from the University of Singapore found that these methods really only reduce hallucination to some degree, but it's unfortunately just not very predictable. And then furthermore, using something like a chain of thought approach is of mixed utility. So you can't use it for everything. It is effective in some very specific tasks, but it still needs the right amount of context. Now, what the two proven mechanisms to address code quality are guardrails and fences, along with external real-time knowledge enhancement. So that's inside of Tabnine. That means using RAG. That means retrieving actual project-specific functions, libraries, and documentation even before a query is sent to an LLM, and enhancing that. And then on the tail end of the response, ensuring accurate, up-to-date suggestions as well, and filtering AI responses through retrieved context instead of relying purely on the model's memory. So when you think about agentic AI, make sure you get agentic AI that can use deep organizational insights, and make sure that you get agentic AI that has these two principles built into it, which is what we believe make it appropriate for enterprise software development. The first is comprehensive understanding of company knowledge and standards. And the second is absolute control over the AI's scope, behavior, and decisions as it works. And when we say that absolute control, we mean it both on the engineering leadership level, as well as control given to the individual developer for every single task and query. And that's what we're delivering in Tabnine. It's the AI software development platform tailored to you. We're working on creating the future of agentic AI for software development designed to meet the needs of enterprise engineering teams. And what we like to say is Tabnine is AI that is fully onboarded to the enterprise. So we've built out agents for every step of the SDLC. And now we are working on increasing their level of autonomy. Now, all of our agents and all of our AI offerings are built around a foundation of trust and control. We call that human in the loop design. Next, of course, we get full organizational awareness built in. And of course, the entire solution is enterprise grade. So it's safe, secure, private, fully self-contained. And because we know, we actually do this early last year when we invented the concept of switchable models and AI code assistance, was that engineering teams want to be able to have the flexibility to leverage the current best and the future best models. So with Tabnine, you get complete model flexibility. And here's how it looks from a architecture perspective broadly. This isn't quite an architecture diagram, more of an architecture, but look, to use our agentic capabilities, you don't have to switch out your IDE, okay? Tabnine just works in the IDEs that your developers already use, and it always will. Furthermore, you're not just limited to a single source of context. Use and connect into any Git-based repository from any provider and any type of that. So with GitHub, that includes the SaaS and the enterprise version. With Bitbucket, both versions there, and same with GitLab as well. And then, of course, any Git-based repos. If you've got stuff like Apache, things of that nature, you can plug that in as well. Now, our agents, we have generation agents and validation agents. So they generate and validate code. They get connected into our enterprise context engine, which features a control layer and insight layer, which I'll dive into deeper later. And then, of course, you've got your mix of models that you want to use. Now, here's a way to think about the use of AI. So you've got our AI chat, of course, and then you've got dedicated agents for each step. And then, of course, you've got AI code completions, you've got custom commands, you've got all sorts of tricks to customize the workflow to your liking. But we help with every step of the SDLC. Now, I've been tooting my own horn here, but we're recognized by analyst firms, top ranked by Gartner in the AI Code Assistance Critical Capabilities Report against all 12 major providers. Ranked first for 3 use cases, ranked a very close second for 2 use cases out of the 5 that they looked at. And then, of course, Everest Group and OMDIA have given us accolades as well. Now, let's dive into the context engine. So 4 layers of this: local workspace context, code-based connection, and non-code source connection. Non-code source connection today includes Jira Cloud and Data Center. Also connect as many repos as you like. Coaching, that's our control layer. That is your customized rule set for the code review agent. And then customization. So 2 flavors of that. Now, if you have about, let's say, 2 to 4 million lines of extremely high quality code in a particular specialized language, and you want to deploy on-prem, we can fine-tune a code completions model for you against that. Note that it's a code completions model, though. So that's the fine-tuning option we can help you with. Now, you may have internal fine-tuning efforts that you're doing on your own. Now, were you to go and do that, and let's say take like a Llama or a Coachball or a Quen or any open source model you like and fine-tune it, and you were to become a Tabnine enterprise customer deployed on-prem, you could connect that model into Tabnine and leverage our context engine and agents and the entire platform in conjunction with it. So that's the customization capability. Now, moving on to here, let's talk about Retrieval Augmented Generation with context awareness. So what is it? It's a cheaper way to update the model and increase its performance. It's a more efficient way to update the model and increase its performance. And in our opinion, and as you'll see in the data, it produces a fantastic result in code quality. But it basically optimizes the output of any LLM by referencing external sources of knowledge prior to response generation. So here's your stick figure developer querying Tabnine. How do I build a REST client to call the Acme services layer? That isn't going straight to the LLM. It's hitting our retrieval system. It's going through a re-ranker, an embedding model, multiple stages of RAG, multiple approaches to RAG, looking through the vector space, and then hitting ranked documents. Now, at that point, we're doing restructuring and formulation of the query. Now we're sending all that context back to the LLM. And then when the LLM sends the response out, we're doing some fun stuff on that end as well to improve the quality of the response prior to being shown to you. Now you might ask, this looks pretty complicated. Is latency a problem? It's not. How do we do RAG? A couple of approaches. Start with semantic memory. This uses a semantic understanding of your code base, retrieves semantically relevant entities. It's language specific and uses language specific servers. A good example of this in action is Tabnine might learn that authentication typically involves OAuth, JWT, or session tokens. And if you have a query with authentication in it, it's going to suggest contextually relevant solutions rather than random snippets by looking at your vector storage. Now, vector storage, vector memory, what does that mean? Well, let's say you connect in one of your repositories into Tabnine. Of course, in addition to that, we're looking at about 15 different data sources in the IDE in real time as you're working. Well, all of the context is split into chunks, and then it is converted into numerical embeddings that are digestible by the model, and they're placed in a vector space. And then as changes happen to your code in real time, the vector storage is updated along with it. So it is always up to date. Now, the reason you want to do this is you want to connect in your repos if you have a bunch of best practices in your repositories, existing applications, microservices that you want to use, and you want to expose safe accredited patterns for solving domain-specific problems to your Tabnine AI agents and context engine. And of course, when I say expose, I don't actually mean expose publicly. I mean expose to the platform. The entire solution is fully self-contained. So you deploy on-prem, nothing leaves your environment, nothing leaves your architecture. There is no risk of IP loss or data loss as such. Now, how this works in practice? Let's say a developer has a query searching for like, hey, how do I encrypt passwords? What encryption should I use? Instead of a LLM just suggesting some random encryption, Tabnine's context engine is going to come into play and recommend an encryption from your code base. And so your developer is going to use your specified method of doing that. Now, graph RAG. This is probably pretty cool, I think at least. So you've got your semantic and your vector storage base built, but with an enterprise code base, the AI also needs to understand the relationship between all the different entities. So this builds on top of both of those by structuring that knowledge as a graph. So relationships between your entities like functions, APIs, modules, documentation, components, these all start to get formed and explicitly stored and leveraged for better retrieval. So as Tabnine is retrieving and finding the right context, think about it as like it's traversing the graph and like walking through the graph to retrieve not just related code, but passing through a set of interdependent logic flows. So how this works is it'll create nodes, which will consist of various entities, functions, APIs, security policies, dependencies. It'll connect those with edges. Those will be like relations, like function calls. And an example of how this may work in practice is you might request for like an API request handler. And that'll not just retrieve related auth functions, but it'll pull rate limiting logic, logging utilities as well, such that when you get a response out, it's complete and contextually relevant. And this really helps Tabnine understand how different modules interact, so it provides a structured response. Now, agentic RAG, I can't tell you a whole lot about, but this adds a task-specific element to the mix, and it builds upon our existing RAG architecture. And it further enhances the ability of Tabnine to select context from the right source at the right time for the task at hand. Now, this makes a dramatic difference. I shared with you that 75% automation factor. Now, this is the metrics you'll want to hear about the efficacy of our context engine. So if we're using our chat or agents, 82% improvement in consumption rate from turning on our context, 35% improvement with code completions. So that is, I think those results speak for themselves. Let's move on to the control layer. So this is how we help you accelerate your SDLC without scaling technical debt, which I will argue that our context engine actually helps you do that more so. But this is also how we help you protect against that and security vulnerabilities. So you've got best practices. You know what good code looks like. All the different people on your team know what good code looks like. Let's make sure your AI knows what your standards are for good code. This is how you train it. So starting from the left here, the code review agent, the rules set comes pre-built with thousands of built-in rules. We're adding on rules from various API vendors as well. And then two more sources of rules, human expert rules. So I ask all of you on the call today what your definitions of good code architecture are for a particular language or particular implementation of something. You are going to all give me different responses. So you should be able to tell the AI to follow those practices. And you can do that with human expert roles. You type it in natural language, input it into the UI, and then Tabnine will enhance it and build it into a rule from there. Now, this isn't the only way to train it. You can also automatically learn rules. This is certainly currently something we do for you, but eventually will be something that you just can do yourself. But we do this for you right now. And the way you do that is you tell us to point Tabnine at like your past PR review comments, your code history, wikis, style guides, your golden repository, perhaps with your best code in it. And it extracts a set of rules, and then we share those with you, of course. This all happens in your own environment, of course, as well. And validate them, and then it enhances and builds a rule set for you. So that's a really great way to do it. Now, this rule set goes into our context engine, and then it gets utilized by the code review agent. Let's say you're using the code review agent in a pull request in GitHub, and the GitHub PR. It's going to read the code, review it, suggest fixes, and then flag the rules that it's deviated against and tell you why. Now, the code review agent is also available in the IDE. Within the IDE, within the CLI today. Now, of course, you can govern model usage and data privacy in the control layer as well. So pick whatever LLMs you want to use, deploy them however you want, and then set what LLMs are available to whom on your team. Then that puts them into the model switcher in the IDE plugin for your team, and they can only select between the LLMs that you've approved. So already covered fine-tuning, when to use it, when it's appropriate, how we help with it, how you can do it yourself, and how you can then leverage any innovation you make in fine-tuning an LLM through our platform. So I'll skip that. But really, this is what a platform offers you, right? So architectural freedom, use any models you like from any source, build your own models on your own, fine-tune them on your own, of course, but connect them into the platform, or if you have the right data for it and the right use case, we can fine-tune a code completions model for you. Now, whatever model mix you're using, define your privileges and access controls for it, then connect them into Tabnine's model agnostic AI software development platform, deploy that entire platform however you want. Have us host it for you with a secure SaaS deployment, or deploy it on-prem on your own metal. Or deploy it on-prem and connect into private API endpoints via VPC, or deploy the entire solution on a virtual private cloud. Whatever you want to do, we have partnerships with all the hardware providers, as well as all the cloud providers to facilitate that. Then from there, leverage the context engine and our human-in-the-loop AI agents, our AI code completions, our AI chat, and our technology integrations, as well as our sophisticated RAG architecture and everything else we've built into the platform, along with analytics as well, to embed AI into your SDLC, augment your engineers, and enhance your workflows. And of course, you can use Tabnine for pretty much everything you're doing today in software development. That includes code modernization projects, migration, testing, code review, fixing and finding errors, addressing security vulnerabilities, adding on new feature and functionality, refactoring, doing code translations, executing JIRA tickets, you name it, you can do it with Tabnine. So I'll pause here before we hand off to Chris for the demo and see if there's any questions in chat. AI proposing bad popular code. Yeah, yep. The raw LLMs can do that. ASTs and vector DBs. Not quite sure what you're asking about. If you're asking about language and library support, 600 languages, libraries, and frameworks are supported. So wherever you're writing code, whatever you're writing code in, wherever you need to pull context from, Tabnine's got you covered. I know in the past code completion and chat use different models. Do I understand correctly that both the code completion and chat benefit from the RAG now? That is correct. They do. The code completion is using the semantic memory RAG, so it's a little less sophisticated. But the chat uses all the RAG we talked about. But you are correct. Code completion and chat do use different models. So switchable models only applies to switching out the chat models. Code completions remains the Tabnine universal code completions model there. All right.
Sweet. I think that is it on questions. Let me pull up my screen here.
Valpor, thanks for your question, and looking forward to meeting you tomorrow morning, bright and early for us. So that'll be a fun conversation. All righty, Chris, over to you.
All right. Let me pull up this. Perfect. Okay. Can we all see this? I believe we can. But we're gonna spend now. If we've been here before, we've ran a lot of very similar demos. This one's gonna be a little bit different, right? We're gonna really talk about the context engine today. And we're going to show how Tabnine's giving engineering leaders the control and governance that they need while providing their developers with AI assistants that they'll actually want to use, right? I think a lot of leaders, as Amaya said, that we've talked to often worry about AI introducing security vulnerabilities or generating non-compliant code, or as we've talked about a lot today, creating technical debt. Right. And Tabnine solves these problems with a comprehensive set of controls that do not sacrifice developer productivity. So before we jump in, though, I think it's beneficial for us to go over the UI and everything that we'll sort of experience and see along the way. So I'm not confusing anyone too much. So I open up my IDE. In this case, I'm using Visual Studio Code. But we support Visual Studio 2022. We support the entire JetBrains family, Eclipse, NeoVim. We're going to meet you where you're comfortable. There's no need for you to adopt a new IDE. When you open up, in this case, code, you're going to see, and you have Tabnine installed, you'll see the Tabnine icon here on the left-hand side. Opening that up is going to pop up the AI chat. Now, starting at the bottom, you have an area for querying, prompting, right? Use everyday natural language, how you usually speak, and use that to perform your queries, right? You can get specific with @mentions, which allow you to, let's say, reference specific files or functions or methods or classes, right? You can also @mention specific files, right? Like the generator.java file itself. Additionally, this is where you can use custom commands. So longtime users would recognize or remember that they used to be up here. Now we've moved them down within this dropdown. So for most folks, you'll see these top 5 here. That's going to be your explain code, generate tests for code, document code, fix code, and code explorer. Now, all of these other ones, not to say that you can't have a list that looks like this, but these are all custom ones that I've created based on what I found myself prompt engineering on a daily basis, right? So creating Jira info, right? I'm working on new features, or I have an idea for a new feature. I want to create a Jira ticket to properly log that. And it's not going to create it for me, but it's going to get me 90% of the way there. I'll show you that later on. Now, next to that, you have, which is a new, exciting feature here for us, is attaching images as concept or as context, So let's say taking architectural diagrams, right? You want to add in a new service. Your design team has sent you over UI changes or UX changes that you need to implement. Or heck, someone from your marketing team sent you a screenshot that said, hey, this thing's broken. Instead of taking the time to have to go through and search for it. You can attach images, for example, to help you build those functionalities out, fix bugs, produce new architecture. I mean, it's really up to your creativity and imagination, but there's a lot of cool things you can do here. And that's the image's context. Now, to the right of that, you're going to find our Jira agent. And that's where you can implement and validate Jira tickets, right? And we'll get into that here shortly. Now, oh, excuse me, before I move up top, one more area that's also new here is going to be our context scoping. So something really cool we've given to individual developers is the ability to control your own context scope, right? Even more so, you to control it on a easily control it on a query by query or prompt by prompt basis, right? So at the start of each new conversation, I can say, okay, I want it to look at my current files, my local IDE workspace, remote code repositories. I can even use my terminal as context. And this is something that's new here, is being able to remote into not just repositories, right? So the ones I've already added within my Tabnine environment, but now I can go into specific folders and specific files, which is really, really cool. It's an awesome way to be able to really specify and generate really accurate contextual results, what you're hoping for on the first try. Excuse me. So at the top here, below chat, you're going to see our switchable models drop down. So this is where you're going to find all the models that your administrator has provisioned to you and your team. In this case, I am using Claude. I love Claude. That's my speed, but you're able to pick and choose which one is best for what you're tasked with, or based on what team you're on, if you have certain restrictions. Now, to the right of chat, you're going to see our test icon, right? And what this does is this is taking you to our testing agent. And the testing agent allows you to generate comprehensive test plans. And you can do it a handful of ways, right? Or two main ways I like to think of it. One, you can start from scratch, right? You can just build a test file based on code that you've been writing or code that hasn't been tested properly. You can then feed, and then I guess the second leg of that is then either taking pre-existing test files or taking that test file that you just created with Tabnine and feed it back into the test agent. Now, what's going to happen is the test agent's going to reiterate on that, and it will already use your current tests to generate new tests that are not going to be anything like what you're currently testing for. It's going to help you to get full test coverage, which we know is lofty, time-consuming, and historically very difficult. All that's going to change. Now, to the right of that, you're going to see this little, these three bars here, and it's going to populate this drop down. Now, settings, if you've seen my demos before, you know this is one of my favorite areas of the product, and I'm going to tell you here why. So starters, you can integrate into Jira. It's a simple 2 clicks, 30 seconds integration. If you've ever done any sort of integration before, it's exactly like that. It's not hard. And I'm already connected, so this is why you're seeing it here. Below that, you're going to see response length. Right now, response length allows you to use comprehensive or concise, or receive comprehensive or concise responses back from Tabnine chat. Comprehensive is great when you're onboarding into a new project, you're looking for more information. Junior developers, we see them using this a lot. Concise is awesome when you just want straight to the point answers, code snippets, and that's that. So maybe more of your senior or seasoned developers. Now, below this, arguably my favorite spot of this page is custom behaviors and the ability to set a custom behavior set. Now, what this is sort of controlling how Tabnine's going to interact with you long before you even start prompting it, right? When you're talking in Tabnine chat, setting this custom behavior allows things for, you can, in this case, refer to my name, ensure readability modularity and adherence to dry and solid principles, follow test-driven development. Let's see here. Yeah, and ensure that you're following each of these. You can add other things like localization is a really cool one. A lot of folks are global these days, and teams are widespread across multiple countries even, right? So having the ability to localize Tabnine to answer in Hindi, speak Chinese, respond in German, put an emphasis on scalability or architectural patterns, all things that you can customize in here. And that's going to fundamentally change the way that Tabnine chat's going to interact with you. Now, below that, you'll find custom commands. And this is where I was saying earlier, the ability to sort of create these agentic flows that are personal to you. And then you can also share them out with your team. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But at a very low level, you can do pretty easy ones, right? So let me find like a Jira one this is pretty simple, right? So for the selected code, generate a Jira ticket that has a description of what it does or what is wrong, an acceptance criteria for the ticket, and all other relevant info for Jira tickets. That's a pretty simple example of a custom command, something that might take me multiple steps though to do historically without this. Now, something more complex you would see is being able to actually reference specific functions, files, methods, classes, and then use those as context to generate something new. In this case, I have specific guidelines on how I like to write proper documentation, or my org writes proper documentation. Now, when I use this command, it's going to reference that, and it's going to create docs for the selected code based on what's in this guidelines markdown, right? So depending on what type of code it is, right? If it's whether it's functions or methods or classes or the type of the software, right? If it's something for, let's say, authorization versus something that is design, it's going to have different guidelines how I want those documentation to be written. And that's a really cool way to sort of take the heavy lifting out of doing something that's historically pretty time consuming. Now, let's jump in a little bit into the files. So more into the developer flow. Let me find a good example here. Okay. So, excuse me. As you're typing, Tabnine, okay, here in gray, not what's in the dropdown, but what's shown in gray here, this is our code completions. So as you're typing, Tabnine is going to recognize your intent, right? If you are typing, in this case, more useful info, it's going to recognize that and suggest that. If you're typing documentation, tests, anything, it's going to recognize your intent and automatically provide helpful suggestions based on that. And they are remarkably accurate. Above that, you're going to see our code lens, or above each block of code, you're going to see our code lens. Right now, what this is sort of a quick way to access each of those agents that you've seen within the drop down here. So your edit, test, explain, and document code. Additionally, if there was something wrong, you would see a fix appear here, which is again a quick way to just fix this specific block of code. Each code lens is only specific to the block of code that it falls under. Or that is under it. Now, taking it a step further, even more in the developer flow, say you don't want your hands to leave the keyboard. On a Mac, you can hit Command-I. Now, I know for some JetBrains users, that might be an issue with current key bindings, but you can remap them, so no worries. And that's going to populate this drop-down menu. Now, this is our quick commands palette. You can use natural language types instructions, just like you did with chat, and it will perform the same way. You can also access our quick commands, right? So your fix, document, explain, and code. You can determine, in this case, if I'm in here, it's going to say that this is my scope. I can change that scope. If you want it to be bigger or smaller, that's something you can refine. And additionally, you can also choose the model from this dropdown. But we're sticking with Claude for today. So let's talk about our unique approach to standards and practices, right? As Amaya said earlier, generic AI tools that produce textbook answers with no understanding of your organization's coding, Tabnine can be configured to follow your exact requirements. So we'll start over here within our rules interface. So here's the rules interface, and you can see, of course, there's a predetermined set of, or predefined set of rules based on software development best practices. But what makes Tabnine so special is you can easily customize these rules to match your unique organization's standards. So if we go over to Java here, and let's say, we have this rule here. You can determine what is a good and bad example. You can also determine the severity as well. Not sure if you'd want to mention or mess around with the Java language because that's pretty firm. But you can also then mess around with or customize the ID of the rule as well. And then you can turn on if it's or determine if it's team-wide, user-wide, and sort of those kind of settings. Now, it's important to note that these rules that we've gathered in the beginning are we've evaluated and analyzed and worked with leading voices in the software development space to come up with these rules and guidelines. But as Amaya said, it's customizable. This is meant to be something that's unique to each organization. So a handful of ways to implement your own rules or import your own rules. But again, you can import them from here. You can direct us to a golden repository, or you can just hand it off to us as well. Now, when it comes to the sophistication of this, you notice that this isn't just a basic linting check, right? These are sophisticated guidelines that understand context. What Amaya said earlier is that we might ask, 60, we might ask everyone here at the time there was 60 something how to do a certain problem, and we might get 62 answers. And the hard part is that they're all correct, right? But the only one that's going to fly in your organization is the one that's specific to how you do things. And that's this coaching allows you to do, really, really refine, law far beyond what a linter is capable of doing. Now, on the PR side of things, let's say moving into the IDE, I'll show you what this looks like. So for this password generator application I built here in Java, we can say Tabnine. Let me just go up here. Oops. Review repository. Now what it's going to do is send the following files for code review. And I can say review report last. And it's going to, it might take a second here to review this report or to generate this report, but that's okay because I'm just going to pull this up. And this is one that I've done earlier yesterday. So what it's doing here is it's providing, based on my rule set, the file, it's performing this review, right? And it's going to give me all of the violations. And not just the violation, it's going to tell me, okay, where is it happening? What specific file? What lines are in question? What is the violation? And how severe is it? Okay, it's a warning. So not a critical, but something I should look at. Here's the to-do and the description, the suggested revised version, and then some more background information on what we're doing here. Here's the lines. The operation was to modify, and it only covers one block of code. And then there's the rule ID that this code is broken. And it's going to perform that for each error that the coaching or code review agent finds, right? Now, moving along, but within that same sort of security policy governance, there's a huge concern that we've been talking about today, and that's IP compliance and copyright issues, as we've been talking about for months, right? And we have something cool, it's new, and it's our provenance and attribution system. And I will show, let's see here. Okay, so this is a query that I just ran here a second ago. And I'm asking within this fraud detection dashboard how I can implement a zero auth for the sidebar navigation, right? And provenance and attribution, what it does is when a developer gets a suggestion, like we're seeing here, Tabnine's automatically going to check it against publicly visible code repositories. And if there is a match, the system flags it and references the source along with its license. And we're soon taking this a step further. You're going to be able to set organizational governance for AI policies directly through the admin console. You will be able to determine what licenses or license types your organization considers compliant and suppress the non-compliant ones entirely. And for teams with super strict requirements, you can even implement complete censorship of generated code that might have licensing concerns. And for audit purposes, you'll be able to generate downloadable reports for every piece of code that was flagged during developments. So again, for a lot of folks, a lot of other AI coding tools that leave compliance as an afterthought, Tabnine builds this protection right into the workflow. So your legal teams will thank you, and your developers will not have to worry about accidentally introducing IP issues. So what you'll see here, for example, at the bottom, excuse me. So we have one here. Okay, this is an MIT license. It's going to say, for this code that it's provided, there's a license attached here, and it's going to show the source for that. Now for this one here, there's a licensing alert. We have a non-permissive license detected. So I have an Apache 2.0 and I have 2 MIT licenses. Now, as a developer, if I didn't have any rules or guidance set in place, it's now up to me, based on my knowledge, to say, okay, I can make this choice to include this or not, knowing what I know about the attribution or the licenses attached to this code. So we're going to move back over to permissions and governance. And if there's anything that I want to cover, I don't have chat pulled up right now. So if there's anything I'm in the comments or anything that anyone wants to see, heck, even May, if there's anything that you want me to cover specifically, wrangle me in and I'll gladly go over there and start chipping away at it. So let's go over permissions and governance, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the controls. So when you have, we'll look at how Tabnine lets you control who has access to what, right? So there is the ability here to connect different repositories where, let me use a better use of our time here, because I think we might have something a little bit more interesting, especially because we're talking about RAG. So let's move back here, and sorry for jumping around here. We're going to talk about our insights layer, because I think that's what folks here probably actually want to see, and that's where developers actually work, and that's where we've placed RAG architecture control directly in their hands, right? So when we talk about workspace indexing, that's the ability that Tabnine uses 15 different data points, right, to understand your local workspace context. And it's not just about the file that you're editing. Sorry for jumping around here. Not just about the file that you're editing, right? It's a comprehensive awareness of your development environment, right? So when a developer uses Tabnine, The AI automatically considers their current file, open files, current selection, imported libraries, compiler errors, runtime logs, project metadata, Git history, even conversation history up here. It's going to use as extra context to help create, an incredibly context-rich AI assistant, or I should say, AI-driven development platform, right? So let's show one of those documentation examples. So I think that's a good way to showcase RAG, right? So what we're going to do here is I'll navigate to my documentation guidelines. So as I said here, this is a specific markdown that I've written to generate documentation, or how I should be writing my documentation based on what it is, right? If it's a field, if it's a package, if it's an API, minor changes, major changes, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do here is let's find one that doesn't look like it has it. Okie dokie. So, or we'll do a different one. All right. Let's use this guy. This is just an easy one. So we will select this code, and what we're going to do is use create docs from template. Now, just to make sure here, let me go into my custom command. There we go. We're going to change this just to show you how it works. We're going to say Java documentations guideline. And let's, remove this guy as well. Java documentations guideline. Okay, perfect. So now we're in our chat. All I have to do is click this, create docs from template, enter. It's going to go back. It's going to reference that file. Interesting. It's not saying that it's here. Huh. Well, let me see something here. Create docs from template. We're going to go jump to a different one. Perfect. Let's just remove this guy here because I know this is not right. Perfect. All right. So this is our code in question. Awesome. Not sure what happened there. It's perks of doing a live demo. Sometimes things don't always work as you expect them to.
Chris, do you mean to use 3.7?
Ah, get confused. Yeah, I usually am a 3.5 guy, but
I am as well.
On 3.7. Now, something really cool here before I add this in. And first of all, let's just take note that it's now following the proper way that I like to write documentation. Secondly, it's going to give a reason why it follows these guidelines. And then it'll also provide references on what it used to provide this this query, right? This is the context that it used, which is perfect. Now, you're going to see a button here that's highlighted from the get-go with each code snippet, but it's really powerful. It's not something to be overlooked. Now, I'm currently in this file, but let's just say I was over here, clicking the apply button, regardless of where I was at, right? So I was in the generator.java file. In fact, I was all the way down here on line 210. Clicking apply immediately took me over here to the password.java file, exactly where this code should be inserted. I can review it. I already have it. Looks good. Let's accept the change. And boom, you're done. Right? That's something that you see a lot of other folks maybe have just an inserted cursor or just the ability to copy the code. But the ability to apply is nothing that should be overlooked. It is incredibly powerful. So let's keep moving along, and let me show another form of context, which is image as context. So let's say we're going to go over here, back to our fraud detection. And then you'll notice that each time I go in here within each application and I have a new goal, right? A new thing that we're talking about, a new goal for me that I'm trying to complete, I'm starting new conversations, right? So chat history, it's great. Have a lot of conversations in there. It's helping build up that memory. But think of a full conversation. It can only handle so much, right? So it's best to be able to break them out and isolate what you're talking about, right? It's like going to a team meeting and telling, everyone on your dev team that, a laundry list of bugs all at one time. No one's going to enjoy that. So don't do it here. Just isolate and work strategically. Right, I'd like to say goal-based. So what we're going to do here is we are going to add a new image. Let's find one. Okay. So first, let's show something like this. This is an ER diagram, right? So if I wanted to, this is a functionality or a concept I'm trying to implement here within this application, I can say, how do I implement this ER diagram into my Prisma schema? Heck, I don't even need to say Prisma schema, but I will because it's already there. That's the auto completions, right? So Tabnine knows that I have Prisma being used in this project, right? So it's going to auto complete and just suggest that as I'm typing in my query, and then it's going to read this image as context, and then it's going to use that to help create code, and not just help create code, but help create code that follows how I've historically been writing in this project, in my code base, how my organization as a whole writes code, and it will generate a response following that format. And awesome as well, I'm going to see here there is some attribution attached to it. I can make that choice if I want to include it, or I want to leave this and try to reiterate and do something that doesn't include this kind of licensing. Now, for the sake of this, we're not going to implement that here right now, but what we can do is go back to our downloads. Let's find that darn update. Perfect. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to add some new buttons to this application. Whoops, I need to say, based on the screenshot, add the new functionality. Oh, to the sidebar navigation. Already knows what I'm doing. That is fantastic. Cool. Sweet. We're going to update the sidebar component in your dashboard.tsx, which is shown in the screenshot. Awesome. Start updating the sidebar component, then we'll provide the implementation. Let's just go. Forgot. I like to follow test-driven development here. So the first thing it's going to do, if you remember my custom behavior, is it's calling me Chris, is telling me what that I need to do. It's going to start with a unit test so I can follow that TDD. And then we're going to update the sidebar component to include the new button. Now, here's where it gets really cool. Does this style of documentation look familiar? It does for me, and that's because I know this is how I explicitly outlined it to write documentation when I'm generating new things like this. And will it say, now that's smart. It doesn't even need, it's not even using it as a reference right now, but it just knows, probably based on my chat history, right, as well as just having project context, it's exactly how I want to write it. And again, it's as simple as clicking apply. Those changes go in. We'll click apply down here as well. Awesome. I can review it. Here's what's changed. Here's what's different. If I want to accept it, I can accept it, or I can discard that change. So we're just going to 86 that one for right now. So that's pretty sweet. That's images context. There's a lot more different examples. We could spend a whole session just talking about this, which I believe we are doing that in the future. Now, let's talk about another form of context. We'll use Jira this time around. Right, so let me go back here. We still have a sidebar test. All right, that's fine. Okay, so let's go start a new conversation. Now you can either type at Jira : and it's going to pop up this menu, or you can just hit this button. Now, what you're going to see here is I have 5 assigned issues. If we go over to my board here, you're going to see 15 assigned to me and 59 total. All of these numbers are different. Why is that? Well, for starters, I'm only seeing what I've been, what's been assigned to me in Jira within Tabnine. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm only going to see the last 15 or the tickets that have been active within the last 30 days within this dropdown, right? So not a slew of year-old tickets and things that are just going to clog this up and make it unusable. It's designed to be relevant and to make your life easier. What we can do here is we can say, okay, I want this ticket. If I didn't know what this ticket was, you could ask for info about it. We can say, tell me about this ticket. Awesome. Not only is it going to tell me about it, it's going to give me the implementation for it. Excuse me. Seems to be a frog in my throat this morning. Awesome. Okay. Now it's providing this code. Awesome. It's based on my acceptance criteria here. It's done a compliance check. Here's some testing recommendations after implementing these changes. You should verify the colors, test in Chrome, and check that it all remains readable with the new background colors. Easy enough. Let's click apply. She's taken its sweet time. Accept. Maybe I'm just impatient. Save. Let's go over here. Oh, wrong app. Another fun app, but the wrong app. Boom. All right. Well, I don't love the color palette, but I do love that it's at least red and navy blue now, which is exactly what I want it to be. Also, we have a new button, which would be the admin panel, which is cool. So, yeah, this is neat. This is the Oops. Too many windows. Yeah, so that's being able to implement a Jira ticket, right? That's a non-code source being used as RAG, which is awesome. So maybe one of the last few things here I'll cover right now before we start going into a QA is going to be codebase connection. So let me pop on over here. What we're going to do is I'm just going to rip this. All right. So I am going to, I'm a developer. I am tasked with creating, a new feature. And we're a big company and I don't work next to all these teams that are developing. But I'm so sure that someone's already created this sort of functionality before, right? So what you can do is one use case. You can use code-based connection to ask questions about different connected repositories, right? So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to pick a remote repository, and I'm going to use this cars telemetry. And I'm going to say, explain to me the purpose of the cars telemetry repo and scope and how it contributes to the overall car management system. Awesome. Now what it's going to do is it's going to say, here's what the purpose is. Here are the key components, excuse me. This is how it plays the role that this telemetry system plays in my organization's greater project. And then here are the references where it pulled that from. And I can specifically go and see those, right? So now I'm not wasting time reading my other team members' GitHub repositories to see what they're doing, so I don't have to worry about reproducing tech that's already been created, creating tech debt. And I'm not doing, work that I don't need to. I'm much more efficient, I'm much more informed, and I'm much more resourceful now. And this is just for one, right? One example, I don't want to reuse someone else's code. You can, ultimately, if you're using telemetry or a microservice, let's say in your application, you can pull that code or from those repositories that your other teams have already created into your project, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. It is incredibly powerful and really cool and very, very accurate. Excited for everyone to start being able to use the remote folder and the remote file as well. That's a cool new addition to this scoping. Trying to see here what else we can do here. We've covered, let's cover testing, because that's something that is a hot topic. So let's move back over here. And we're going to go to our testing agent. So for starters, let's see where we're at. All right, password.java. All right. So we're going to open up our test agent and we're going to click generate test plan for code. Now we're going to do a generator.java and we're going to hit continue. Now you can do it for project or file wide. You can also do it for parts of a file, specific methods or classes. You can unit test specific areas of features that you're building. In this case, we're just going to do the whole darn generator.java file. I do not have a test file, so we're going to create a new one here. If you did, you would just hit browse. Whoops. you would hit browse and you could select it from the drop down here. For this case, we don't, so we're going to hit continue. Now, what it did was create a new file, and then it's starting now to create a template. And third, it's going to create a handful of suggested tests, right? So you can go in and you'll see them here in plain English, right? You can choose to apply them, and it will insert them. Oops, well, it should insert them within the application or the file of the project. Additionally, you can make changes to those. So these are just starting points, right? All suggested tests, meaning that they're able to be customized and fine-tuned. So let's say whoops, not sure what's going on here. Let me see something. It's also the perks of me having so many darn windows up. And this has been a project that is notorious for giving me issues. Generate test plan. Whoops. Continue. For this case, we already have that file created, so let's just use that and we'll go back and keep working with it. So I'll hit browse, generator test.java. Here we are. It's going to generate another test plan. Now you'll see that it's already going to factor in this test plan as an existing test. It's going to generate a handful of new ones that are not related to this test at all, which is cool. Again, getting you to that point of full test coverage, which is historically lofty and really difficult to do. Let's see here. Oh yeah, just running into issues today. Conveniently when we're presenting this. Awesome. So we can also make, like I said, those changes. So let's go in here and find one. We'll do this one actually. We're gonna say change minimum length to 5 characters. And it's going to regenerate that test, this time with the refinement that I am looking for. So expected length is now 5 instead of 1, which you can see here. So use this to be able to actually modify your individual tests that Tabnine creates, and then continue to just feed it until you get the coverage that's desired from you and your team. So let's see here. I'm trying to think. We've done code review. We've done documentation. We've done testing. We've went through adding or generating code from a variety of different code and non-code RAG sources or sources of context. What else do we have to do? I'd say it's important just to maybe wrap things up right here is what you've seen today is how Tabnine places powerful RAG capabilities directly in the hands of developers, right? This isn't just another AI coding tool. It's a comprehensive context engine that understands your entire development ecosystem, right? By pulling context from 15 different data points across your workspace, connecting to your entire code base, integrating with non-code sources like Jira and images, and applying your organization's best practices and standards. Tabnine really delivers this AI assistance that's feels like it's been working on your team for years, not minutes. And this level of context awareness is why developers and leaders actually adopt and stick with Tabnine. The suggestions are relevant. The generated code works within your existing systems, and it all happens right where developers already work in their IDE. So I'll stop there for right now. And if there are any other questions or anything that we want to cover that I didn't already cover, I'm happy to do that. And thanks for all bearing with me while we had some technical difficulties. It's the perks of live demoing. Things always seem to happen when you're on air. But let's see if I have anything else I can showcase. Okay.
Alrighty, a question for or comment rather from Luis. So far, I've taken over. Thanks for your comment, first of all, Luis. So far, I've taken over test code and then made slight modifications afterward in the actual files. That worked fine for me as a non-test expert. I was more challenged by deciding what to test and which tests would be too much or just right. But I think Tabnine did a good job there with its suggestions. Well, thanks, Luis. We're glad you're finding the testing agent helpful. Alrighty. Question. Oh, rest assured, no matter how prepared I was, I almost always have some issue during live demos. The joy of demoing things live, you know how it goes. Question for Fred. Can Tabnine use only the context of a particular Git branch?
We
Chris,
can't use, we can't do a specific branch yet. To my knowledge, it is exclusive to folders and then files within those folders. But I believe that's all off of the main project. I don't think we can actually go into a specific branch, but that's something that we can confirm with someone who's more technical than I am, and we can get back to you on that. But to my knowledge, no, it is just folder and file and repository.
Yeah, so for think about it, like you got all your repositories connected. That's codebase context. Then you can drill down into further detail from there on a individual repository, folder within repository, and then file within folder level to your liking. Curious what is what's the use case you're looking to achieve with taking in context from a particular Git branch? What are you trying to do? While we're waiting for Fred, would it be possible to use a knowledge base as an external rack? For example, document wiki. Great question. So Confluence is on roadmap for exactly that functionality. Right now, external document context is achieved through Jira, and then through local context and through code-based context, in the sense that if you have like a markdown file or something of that nature that has documentation in it, I can point Tabnine at that. That's probably not quite what you're asking, though, because the people that are making the documentation in wikis in something like a Confluence are probably not converting that into a markdown file that's then getting uploaded along with the specific project. But one custom command that I've personally built is to create those types of high-level documentation texts from existing code and projects in Markdown format. So you can use it the other way around if you want to help those folks as a developer to write that documentation. You can use Tabnine to generate it, and then take your Markdown file and take that text into the into your document wiki.
I thought I had something for a README here that I could show that, but I can also create something on the fly while we're doing this. Let's see. Tab I use. Debugging issues from field from previous versions. Gotcha. Okay, no, that's an interesting use case, Fred. Let us get back to you on that.
Yeah, the way you could do it today would be if you took that Git branch and then cloned it into your local workspace. That'd be like the fastest way I could tell you to achieve what you're looking to do there right away.
Another cool thing we can do is you can analyze dependencies as well as update them from Tabnine chat. So I'm not sure. We'll see here what it will tell me, but you'll notice that Tabnine, well, it's not going to do it here. But yeah, there we go, right at the end. So not just recommending suggestions, also recommends terminal commands. Equally as easy to run. It's just as simple as clicking this play and this play button, not run that command within your terminal. So multi-use, and just another way that I've used my custom commands. Find and fix JS dependencies, find and fix Java dependencies. You can really find and fix really any dependency that you want. I just use one for POM files or one for JSON files, right? But being able to go through, analyze this file, review the current dependency versions for any known, see if there's any known vulnerabilities, and update the dependencies based on the review. So another cool use of a custom command, taking the prompt engineering out of my hands, using context as well to then create ultimately this really concise, contextually accurate answer. If there are no further questions, I'd say we can probably wrap this up.
Sounds good to me. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. And we will not be streaming next week because we will be on site at NVIDIA GTC. So if you're coming to GTC, come and stop by the Tabnine booth and spin our prize wheel for a chance to win a pair of Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. We'll be doing a giveaway the last hour of the expo hall every single day at GTC. So hope to see you there. And we also have some pretty big news we're announcing at GTC. So stay tuned for that.
Very big news.
Oh, we got some questions. I just came at the end here. What I want to ask is really off topic. Do you plan to make something like Composer in Tabnine? You're asking about an agentic, more autonomous agentic capability. I think you're going to be. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Can't give away much, but a timely question. From Venomin, do you support refactoring using RAG, like make this encoding implementation compliant with on repo X, or find arrest discrepancies between server in repo A and client in repo B? Absolutely, Venomin. That is actually one of the key use cases for our context awareness. So you could do things like that. You could do stuff like let's see here. Which front-end components depend on outdated API versions, or like if I modify the user service database schema, which microservices might break, or you could do like debugging and root cause analysis. So why is the order service experiencing high response times? Find that out and identify ways to fix it. What logs should you check for like a failed transaction? You look for and resolve and optimize and refactor things like duplicate microservices. So you could search your code base and say, like, are there duplicate microservices that are implementing similar logic for this particular use case, so on and so forth. Gotta get the kid to bed anyway, even in here. Thank you, Luis, and good night to you, and hope your kid sleeps well. Toto, another thing off topic. Love that YouTube username, by the way, Toto. Another off topic, I want to give you high praise for being the only AI coding assistant which allows to create or edit files in Eclipse. Thank you for that. Our commitment to meeting developers where they are means not asking them to switch out of their favorite IDE. So we support the broadest range of IDEs, source controlled management systems, and we also support the broadest range of models. So if you have a favorite model, you don't have to swap that out either.
Yeah, well, there are no other questions. I guess this is the official us saying goodbye. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Again, if you're at NVIDIA GTC, you can come meet these talking heads in person. It won't just be through a screen anymore. You can come see us and we can chat about all things Tabnine and software development and everything in between. But
yeah, if you come by the booth, tell us you saw us on office hours, and we'll just give you an extra raffle ticket for being one of the crew.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining and staying with us. Another awesome session. We always enjoy it, and we hope you do too. See you in a couple weeks.